Hey guys, Sean here at the Gardener Center. You know, we sell more annual plants here at the store in a year than we do any other thing that we sell here at the store. And I mean, think about all of the other products and types of plants that we sell, not to mention the fact that we really only sell annuals for 5 months of the year. And they often represent 25% of our sales for an entire 12-month year. It's really incredible the amount of annuals that move in and out of our nursery at this time of year. Blows my mind every year. So this week, you know, we are at the very beginning of peak summer annual planting season. So this week I'm going to spend some time, and it may be a little more time than I normally spend because this is a hot topic and a big subject. I want everyone to be successful with their annual hanging baskets and their annual planters this year, and I think I have some insight for you guys that even if you've been doing this for years, that I think you're going to be really happy to hear about, and I think you're going to learn a lot this week, so please stay tuned. All right, so the main reason we sell so many annuals and you guys all invest in them year after year after year is because they perform. There is nothing else that you can plant, be it a perennial or a shrub, that's going to give you the color we get from annuals all season long. I mean, nothing comes even close to them. That's the reason we sell so many, and that's the reason we're selling so many right now. Most of our annuals that we sell here at the Gardener Center in the nursery end up in containers of some sort, be it window boxes or hanging baskets or patio pots, porch pots like this. We don't sell a lot of bedding annuals here, although they are used for that. I'm going to get into a little bit why we don't in just a bit. But what I would today, I'm literally going to start at the bottom and work my way up today, because you know, when you're talking about taking care of annuals, sure, watering and fertilizing is super important, but it isn't the only thing. And a lot of you guys are actually making a big mistake during the planting process with your annuals. So I'm going to try to take your mind to a different place today. And I think once I'm done talking about this, you're going to have a much better understanding about not so much how to grow the annuals, but the way that they grow, and it's going to give you a better insight on how to take care of them. A big mistake that people make, and I have this conversation at least 10 or 12 times a day this time of year, is, you know, a customer has their pot at home, they've invested in their pot, they're investing in their annuals financially and with time, and then when the discussion comes to planting the annuals, the topic turns to, what do I use to fill up most of the pot so that I only have to put a little bit of soil on the top? Or alternatively, you know, if you've been at the store, you'll see that we use a lot of this packing material to display our plants. And now the key word there is display. We're just staging plants like this. So we use that Excelsior packing material just to kind of set the plant to the right height here. And this works for us because this plant's only going to be in this pot for a couple of days or maybe a week. But a lot of you see this and you're like, well, that's a brilliant idea, because what I'm going to do now, I'm going to skip the soil part and I'm just going to fill up the bottom of the pot with something and set this here. Or I'm going to put a bunch of empty Poland water bottle springs on the bottom and then just put soil on the top 6 inches. These are both equally terrible ideas, both of them. And I'm going to tell you why. And we're going to start, like I said, we're going to start from the bottom and work up. So first thing we're going to look at here is I want you all to take a look at the roots on this petunia here. It's only the middle of May. And this plant is already probably 50% roots and 50% soil. You know, for you guys to expect this plant to sustain itself over the next 4 months with just this amount of soil, it's not going to work. Not to mention, I'm already watering these once a day here at the nursery, and we've barely gone over 80 yet. Forget about having this sitting in this pot in the sun all summer long like this. You want to get it planted, and you want to get it planted in the pot, and you want this pot to be full of soil. This is not a big pot. It's incredible how many people think that this is a big pot and that part of it needs to be filled with something that isn't soil. Because let me tell you something. We just saw the roots on this guy. This petunia is ready to roll. If you get this guy out of that plastic pot, fill this pot with soil. Now keep in mind, the soil this is in is just Pro Mix. It's mostly peat moss. And the growers, when they grow these all have little drip lines in them. So every time they get water, they get fertilizer. You're not going to fertilize your plants every time you water them. You want to get them into a pot that's full of soil, a good soil with compost in it, like our Costa Maine soil. And once those roots that we just saw make contact with that soil, they're going to go nuts. And they're going to spend the next 4 months swirling around and filling this entire pot here. And that's really important for a couple of reasons. Number one, there's nutrients there that the plant needs. And number two, you're going to water a lot less. And this plant is going to be really, really happy like that. I just did all of my planters yesterday at my house. Second Thursday after Mother's Day. It's practically an observed holiday at my house. Everybody knows what goes on. And I plant my annuals a little differently than most people. And a lot of it has to do with the fact that I'm a little more science-y than aesthetic. Not that I don't want my planters to look nice, but I like to plant a single plant in a big pot. You guys are all about the thrillers and the spillers and the fillers. Help people all day long with that. I like to grow a single plant in a pot to picture perfect perfection. No spots on the leaves, no crispy leaf edges, covered with flowers from now until the end of September, beginning of October. Then it becomes an uphill battle. But at least I like to get those 4 months under my belt when I do it. And the reason I'm able to do this is because I plant my plants in big pots full of soil. That whole, let's fill the pot up with something that's not soil and then putting the plant on top at the end, that's like pouring your heart and soul into a prime rib roast and then yanking it out of the oven and slicing it up and giving it to your guests. It's going to be terrible and dried out because you cut corners at the very end. It's the same thing with the annuals. I mean, think about it. You already spent money on the pot. You spent money on the plants. Why try to save a few bucks on a little extra soil at the end or a couple of minutes that it would take to go through with the actual planting? So full pot. And guys, trust me, if you have a pot that's so large that you would have to hire help to move it if you filled it with soil, then yes, you can fill up half of it with styrofoam packing peanuts or empty water bottles, soda bottles, that sort of thing. But 9 out of 10 times, you want to fill the whole pot with soil, and you also have to be realistic about how many times during the course of a summer are you going to be moving your pots anyway. So you want to take it through to the end, make sure they have plenty of soil in the pot. There is a little different, we want to handle things a little differently when we're planting smaller annuals like these little 4-inch pots. So I'm going to come right back and tell you about those differences. All right, guys, so that hack we just saw when I put that whole petunia in this pot here, and I mentioned that I like planting single plants in my pots at home. Well, I do that with most of them. So feel free to put a finished hanging basket in your pots and walk away. Make sure you plant it like we talked about. But I know a lot of you guys like to do little combinations of the 4-inch plants. So same rule applies. And this may seem unbelievable to a lot of people, but I just put these 4 little 4-inch petunias in here. And if you fill this whole pot with soil and just put these 4 little 4-inch petunias in here, by the time we get to the end of July, beginning of August, this entire pot is going to be filled with roots the same way that petunia basket's roots looked like just a minute ago. So these guys still want more soil, the better. There's a couple of things you want to do a little differently though, because people ask all the time, well, how much should I water these? And it's always like, well, why don't you take a seat and let me talk to you about that, because it's not a quick answer. When you first plant these little plants into a big pot full of soil, you have to initially be very careful with the watering. If you pour so much water in here that it soaks all of that soil underneath them, that's going to turn into mud. And these guys, let me pull one of these out here to show you. So these guys don't have nearly the root system that the big hanging basket had. And if these guys get a little too wet and then they're sitting on top of that wet soil, they're going to start to rot. And you know, overwatering plants is really just suffocating them. You're cutting the oxygen off to the roots. They rot. Then the plants wilt. They look like they're dry because people associate wilting with dry. You pour more water on them, and then it's curtains for everybody. So when you first put your planter together, you want to water very sparingly. And you know, it takes some time to learn it. But you want to water them enough to keep the plants that are going to be sitting on top of that soil moist enough that they're happy. You definitely don't want to water it till there's water coming out of the bottom of the pot. That would be overkill. You can do that later on in the summer once they've grown. But I usually like to wait a month after I plant my containers with my little 4-inch, which I do in my hanging baskets. I like to wait a month before I really start watering them to the point that the water's coming out the bottom. And I also like to wait a month for fertilizing. So if you're putting plants into fresh soil in a pot that's been filled with fresh soil, wait 3 or 4 weeks before you start putting the fertilizer on. You know, we like the Jack's Classic Blossom Booster for annuals. And then, you know, so wait a month and then use that every 2 weeks. That fresh soil that they're growing into is going to keep them happy for quite a while. So you don't have to rush right into feeding them. It's actually better to hold off and let them get adjusted in their home first. Another quick thing to remember on the subject of fertilizing, and I know I've said this in the past, but many of you I know are new to to our videos. Never ever fertilize a plant that's wilted. A wilted plant is already in stress, and dry roots with the salts that are in the fertilizer is, again, curtains. So if you have to fertilize and your plants are watered or wilted, water them, wait till the next day, and then get some fertilizer on them. Never water them while they're wilted. Moving right along here, I talked about I do a bunch of these moss baskets at my house. I hang them on my porch, and I literally, again, big pot, small plant, watch it grow to perfection. I always put one 4-inch plant in my moss basket. And you know, it looks a little silly for a few weeks, but they grow in, and by the 4th of July, they're spectacular. I use these cocoa liners in mine. If you guys have done this, something you really should invest in, because these are usually fine until we get to mid-July, and then you might get to a point where you can't keep up with the water once we start getting to those 90-degree days. We have these guys here, which sit in the bottom of the liner. So this is basically it's basically a bowl. And it's got a little perforated screen that sits on top of it. So when you water accumulates under there, and then the plant's roots can go through the holes in the top, and so they can just kind of sip water as they need it. Another thing that's really important, we don't sell nearly enough of these. The hanging baskets. We looked at the roots on the other guy earlier. These are thirsty things. I'm already watering them every single day here, and it's not hot yet. We sell these little soil moist spikes. You guys know Jello gelatin. It's basically the same thing. You stick them into the soil. The spikes absorb water, they expand, and it's like clear Jello. It's like plain Jello. And they don't turn your plants into soup. What happens is it expands and holds the water, and then as the plant dries out, it pulls water back out of the soil moist. This could be the difference between watering your hanging baskets every day and watering your hanging baskets 2 or 3 times a week. It could also be the difference between going away for a 3-day weekend and not having ask your neighbors to water your plants while you're gone. Get the soil moist in there. It's a really good thing. So guys, I hope I took a little bit of the mystery out of the planting. And I'm going to be back to answer one more question that I get asked a lot. All right, guys, real quick before we go, I get asked this question every single day, and I just want to give you guys an answer because I know a lot of you wonder the same thing. A lot of people come in all the time and ask for something like this, or something like the Proven Winners in 6-packs. If you've shopped at the Gardener Center in the nursery, you know we don't sell a lot of 6-packs here. We sell mostly 4-inch annuals. These are the little 6-packs are the ones you use for bedding plants. Quick reason why. These guys here are grown from seed. They're grown from seed, and they're very easy to produce and inexpensive to produce. That's why you can buy a whole bunch of these for not much money. The issue with these 4-inch proven winners and Color Blitz series, anything that has a TM, a trademark next to the name, these guys are the products of years of breeding and genetics. These guys are only produced from vegetative cuttings. They cannot be replicated by seed, and in fact most of them don't even produce seeds because it's been bred out of them so that they flower longer. So if you had a really good time growing proven winners purple petunias last year and you want them in 6-packs, it's not going to happen. It's not because we want to sell you more 4-inch, it's because they just don't exist because of the way they're propagated. So I hope that takes a little bit of the mystery out of that. And as always, guys, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.